No one told you this. There are truths buried beneath the sands of time. There are prayers that were never heard, and there are souls that died long before their bodies fell. And when you finally realize, it may already be too late. Are you certain you have never been abandoned by him? The wind moves across the desert, carrying no answers, only grains of sand sharp as memory. The sky hangs overhead, heavy like a verdict not yet spoken. In the distance, the ruins of an ancient city crumble, where walls once echoed with prayer. Now only the wind whispers through broken stone. They call that place the Valley of Silence. Not because nothing speaks there, but because nothing answers. Elior walks slowly, as if each step carries a sin not yet forgiven. His eyes are dry, not from lack of water, but from having wept too long in unseen years. He was once a scribe, one who copied sacred words, who believed every line he wrote was seen by him. But now, the scrolls he carries are only repetitions, without a soul. 3 years ago, Elior stood in the temple, beneath torchlight and the murmur of prayer. He heard a voice, not from man, but from somewhere deeper, so deep it made his heart tremble. Leave. Just one word, yet enough to shatter everything he was. He left Jerusalem in the night, without explanation, without farewell, carrying only a question. Why are you silent? His journey was not a search, but an escape from silence, an escape from the feeling that, perhaps, he had never been heard. On the 40th day in the desert, Elior collapsed. No strength left, no prayer left, only a void, vast enough to swallow thought itself. He looked up at the sky, said nothing, because he knew, speaking or not, made no difference. That night, a dream came, not of light, not of angels, but of darkness, a dense darkness, as if it could be touched, and within it, a voice, not gentle, not angry, just empty. Do you still call on me? Elior awoke, cold sweat covering his body. But what frightened him was not the dream. It was the feeling that the voice was not his. He stood and walked on, not because hope remained, but because there was nowhere left to return. 3 days later, he saw someone, an old man, sitting in the desert, as if he had been there before the sand itself existed. White hair, eyes closed, hands resting on his knees, unmoving, unbreathing, like a statue of stone. Elior approached, said nothing, only stood there, watching, for a long time. The old man opened his eyes. Those eyes reflected no light, no reflection of Elior, only an endless void. You have heard the silence, the old man said, his voice dry like dust. Elior did not answer, for he did not know if it was a question or a judgment. And you think it is his absence. The wind grew stronger, as if trying to erase the moment. But you are wrong, the old man shook his head. Silence is not him leaving. Elior finally spoke. His voice cracked, like something long restrained. Then what is it? The old man looked at him. For a long time, so long that Elior felt seen through. It is, when he stops speaking, so you may hear yourself. Silence fell, heavier than the desert. Elior stepped back, his heart racing, not from fear, but because it was too close to a truth he did not want to touch. You have prayed, haven't you? The old man asked. Elior nodded. And you have waited. Elior closed his eyes. And when no answer came, you began to doubt. Elior could not deny it. Not doubt him, the old man continued, but doubt your own faith. Elior opened his eyes, looked straight at him. I want to know if he is still there. The old man smiled, not a joyful smile, but one worn by hearing the same question too many times. He is always there. Then why does he not speak? The old man did not answer immediately. He bent down, picked up a handful of sand, let it fall through his fingers. Do you hear the sand? Elior frowned. No, and yet it is still falling. Silence again. Not every truth needs to be spoken. Elior stepped back, unease spreading in his chest. Are you saying silence is the answer? The old man looked up at the sky. No, he said. I am saying silence is the test. The wind stopped, as if the desert itself was listening. Elior stood there, unsure whether to believe or to walk away. You will keep walking, the old man said, not because you want to, but because you cannot stop. Elior looked at him. You will see things that will make you wish you had never begun. A chill ran down his spine, and in the end, the old man whispered, you will have to answer, not him. Elior turned away, did not ask more, did not look back, because deep inside, he knew this journey was not to find him, but to face a truth far more terrifying, that perhaps he had never left, and it was Elior, who had walked away long ago. The wind rose again, carrying a whisper, unclear whether it came from the desert or from Elior's own mind. Will you still call? Elior did not answer. He only kept walking, deeper into the place where light begins to fade and darkness begins to take shape. Dawn did not come. It simply faded within the darkness, like a memory being erased. Elior kept walking, no longer counting days, no longer separating light from night, because within his mind everything had merged into a single shade of gray, stretching endlessly. The desert changed. It was no longer dunes of familiar sand. The ground began to crack, as if something beneath was trying to break free. The fissures stretched, twisting, like scars across a body long burned. In the distance, a formation of black stone appeared, jagged, uneven, like the teeth of a dead beast. Elior stopped, not out of fear, but because he felt he had been there before, not with his feet, but within a dream. A flicker crossed his mind. A burning city, walls collapsing, people screaming without sound. Elior shook his head, trying to cast the vision away. But the more he resisted, the clearer it became. He walked on, into the land of black stone. There was no wind, no sound. Even his footsteps were swallowed whole, as if this place allowed nothing to exist. Among the stones, a gate appeared, tall, wide, carved from stone, yet with no walls, no city, only a gate, standing alone, in emptiness. Elior approached. Upon its surface, ancient markings were etched, symbols he once copied in his days at the temple. But something was wrong. Those markings were not blessings, not praises. They were confessions. Elior placed his hand upon the gate. A coldness ran through his arm. And then, the gate opened, without sound. It simply was no longer closed. Inside was not a city, not light, but people, hundreds, thousands, standing still, eyes open, but not seeing. They were not chained, not imprisoned, yet they did not leave. Elior stepped inside. One step, then another. No one reacted. No one turned. He moved closer to a man, touched his shoulder. The man slowly turned. The face was Elior's. He stumbled back, breath breaking. "No," he whispered. But when he looked around, all of them were him. Thousands of versions, at different ages, with different expressions. One was crying, one was laughing, one was praying, one was cursing. Elior spun, dizzy. "What is this?" No answer came. And then, a voice, not from outside, but from within. "These are what you became." When he was silent, Elior clutched his head. "No, that is not. You think. There is only one Elior." Another vision surfaced. Elior, kneeling, crying, begging. "Please, say something." Then another, Elior, standing, eyes empty, turning away. "Perhaps he does not exist." Another, Elior, smiling, a cold smile. "I will become what I need." Elior staggered back, heart pounding. "This is not me." "No," the voice whispered. "This is all of you." A cold wind passed through. The Eliors began to move, not to attack, but to draw closer. Each step they took was a memory. Each gaze was a choice. "You chose when he did not speak." Elior shook his head. "I only waited." "No." "You filled the silence with yourself." One Elior stepped forward, his face filled with anger. "You blamed." Another, eyes filled with tears. "You despaired." Another, smiling. "You forgot." Elior fell to his knees. "Stop." But they did not stop. They continued forward, like a rising tide. "What do you think the end is?" The voice echoed. "Fire from the sky. Earth, trembling." A pause. "No. It is when man can no longer hear him." Elior lifted his head, and begins to hear only himself. The Eliors stopped, all of them, looking at him, and in their eyes there was no hatred, only truth. A truth Elior had fled from for 3 years. He had not been abandoned. He had only refused the silence, and in that resistance he had created thousands of versions of himself, each one drifting farther, farther away. From him, Elior rose, his body trembling. "What must I do?" No answer came, only the gate behind him, still open, and ahead, a path leading deeper, where light no longer existed. One more step, and Elior would leave this place. But he knew, wherever he went, those Eliors would remain within him. The wind returned, carrying a question. "Whom will you listen to?" Elior closed his eyes and stepped forward, not to escape, but to face it. The light vanished, not gradually, but as if it had never existed. Elior stepped into the dark. No path, no trace, only the presence of himself, echoing. Space was no longer space. It tightened, then stretched, like a vast unseen breath. He could not see. Each step made no sound, yet gave birth to memory, a memory he did not want to remember. The temple, golden light, the murmur of prayer. Elior stood there, in the past, yet at the same time, still standing in the darkness. 2 worlds, overlapping. He saw himself, writing, lines of careful script, each stroke of ink, like an offering. And then, his hand stopped. A drop of ink fell, spread, like a stain, upon something sacred. "You began to doubt here," the voice echoed. Elior turned, No one was there, not when he was silent, but when you expected him to speak. A silence, longer than memory. Elior clenched his fists. I only wanted a sign. No. You wanted certainty. The darkness shifted, no longer still, but beginning to coil. Shapes emerged, unclear, incomplete, yet Elior knew what they were. The words he never spoke, the thoughts he never confessed, they had taken form. One figure stepped closer. It had no face, but as it neared Elior, it slowly revealed himself, but without eyes, only hollow voids, deep, black. You no longer wish to believe, it said. The voice did not come from a mouth, but from those empty spaces. Elior stepped back. No, I still believe. In what do you believe? The question was not loud, but it struck directly into his mind. Elior opened his mouth, but no words came. You believe in a God who must answer. You believe in a God who must appear. You believe in a God shaped by your will. Each sentence was a cut. Elior fell to his knees. Stop, but the voice did not stop. And when he did not, you began to create him in the form you desired. The darkness trembled. Images appeared. A God who always smiled. A God who always forgave. A God who was never silent. You did not seek him. You only sought a version that comforted you. Elior trembled. No! You called it faith, but it was control. Space cracked, as if truth itself was breaking reality. Elior screamed. Then what must I do? A silence, so long, he thought. Everything had ended. Then the voice returned, softer. Listen, one word. Elior frowned. I have listened, but there is nothing. No, you have never listened. The darkness withdrew, not disappearing, but opening, a void. And within that void, no voice, no image, only presence. Elior stood there, no thought, no prayer, only being. Time lost meaning, a second or a lifetime, no difference. And then, a feeling, not sound, not words, but something, very small, yet real. Elior opened his eyes. Nothing had changed, and yet everything had. He no longer searched for answers. He no longer asked, only listened. And in that silence, he realized something more terrifying than darkness, that he had never left, but also had never spoken, not because he would not, but because what needed to be heard was not words, but truth, and that truth did not come from him, but from within Elior. Elior stepped back. No, he whispered, I do not want that. But the darkness no longer responded, because now there was nothing left to hide. The path ahead revealed itself, not bright, but clear. Elior walked, no longer resisting, but no longer certain, for he knew what awaited him was not salvation, but judgment, not from him, but from his own soul, and that was the true end. There was no thunder, no fire from the sky, no sign of an ending, and that made it more terrifying. Elior walked on, no longer slow, no longer hesitant, as if he knew the end was near. The ground beneath him was no longer sand. It was firm, smooth, like stone worn down by time, or by footsteps that never ceased. Ahead, an open expanse appeared, not desert, not darkness, but emptiness, nothing, and yet too full. Elior stopped, not from exhaustion, but because he felt seen, not from one direction, but from everywhere. No eyes, but awareness, no voice, but presence. And then he understood. This was not a place. This was a moment that could not be undone. You have arrived. The voice spoke, not from outside, not from within, but from everything. Elior did not kneel, did not speak, only stood. For the first time, he had nothing left to ask, nothing left to explain, nothing left to hide. You have heard, you have seen, you have understood. A pause. Then now, who are you? The question could not be escaped, could not be avoided. Elior opened his mouth, but did not answer at once. Not because he did not know, but because, for the first time, he did not want to lie. His voice no longer trembled. I am everything I have denied. The space trembled, not with anger, but with truth. You have feared. Yes. You have doubted. Yes. You have turned away. Elior closed his eyes. A tear fell. Yes. There was no punishment, no roar, only silence. But this time, it was not heavy, not crushing, but opening like a door he had never dared to cross. What do you think judgment is? The voice asked. Elior did not answer, because he already knew. It is not punishment. It is not the end. It is when nothing remains to deceive yourself. A light appeared, not blinding, not radiant, only clear. It did not come from above, not from ahead, but from Elior himself. He opened his eyes, looked down, and saw all versions of himself. The Eliors within the gate, the figures within the darkness, all of them beginning to dissolve, not disappearing, but merging into him. No more division, no more avoidance, no more struggle, only one man, not perfect, but true. Elior fell to his knees, not out of fear, but because he no longer needed to stand. My lord, he whispered, not asking, not demanding, only calling. And this time, the silence did not answer, but did not wound him either, because he understood. He is not a voice, he was truth, and truth does not need to speak, only to be accepted. A gentle wind passed through, not cold, not warm, only present. You have seen, and you have chosen. Now go. Elior stood, no longer heavy, no longer empty, only still. But before he stepped forward, he paused, a feeling, very small, yet impossible to ignore. Is this the end? He asked. A silence, this time, longer than all before. Then, no, this is the beginning you fear most. Elior closed his eyes, and when he opened them, he was no longer there, but standing before a city, Jerusalem, yet not as before. The sky, gray, people walking, but their eyes empty. No one prayed, no one listened, no one asked, only lived like shadows. Elior stood there, and for the first time, he was afraid, not for himself, but for them, because he realized what he had just lived through was not his end alone, but the end of all who have stopped listening. Jerusalem still stood, ancient walls, familiar streets, roofs covered in the dust of time, but something had died, not the body, but the ability to listen. Elior walked into the city. No one looked at him, no one asked, no one recognized, as if he had never existed. A man passed by, eyes open, but not seeing. A woman stood by the well, Her lips moved, but no prayer came. Children ran past, laughing, but without joy. Elior stood in the middle of the street and realized the most terrifying thing was not death, but to live without seeking. He walked toward the temple. The doors were still open. The stone steps remained, but inside there was no one, not because they did not come, but because they no longer had a reason. Elior stepped in. His footsteps echoed for the first time after so long, a sound that was not swallowed. He knelt, not out of ritual, not out of habit, but because he no longer knew where he belonged. "My lord," he said, once more, but this time there was no expectation, no fear, only truth, a silence, but not empty, not heavy, only full. Elior closed his eyes, and within that silence he did not hear a voice, did not see light, no sign appeared, but he knew he was there, not because he answered, but because Elior had stopped demanding an answer. A tear fell, not of sorrow, but of ending, and also beginning. Elior rose, looked outward. The city remained the same. The people remained the same. No miracle, no transformation, because the end does not happen outside. It happens when man no longer listens, no longer asks, no longer faces himself. Elior walked out of the temple. He did not preach, did not shout, did not try to change anyone, because he understood no one can hear until they are ready. He only walked, slowly, among people who lived, but were no longer awake. And then he stopped, in the middle of a street, and looked into a man's eyes. Their gaze met, just a moment, so small, but enough for the man to blink. Something very faint, very fragile, like a crack, appeared. Elior said nothing, only continued walking, because he knew awakening does not come from words, but from confrontation with oneself. The sky above remained gray, but somewhere far beyond, a light, unclear yet real, final reflection. Man does not fear God's silence. He fears when that silence reveals himself. The end is not when the world stops, but when you stop listening to truth. And salvation does not come when he speaks, but when you are brave enough to hear.